My own son put his arms out and blocked the doorway like I was a stranger trying to crash a wedding. "Dad," he said, "you are not going into that room while my wife's family is here." I stood there for a long moment, staring at him, at my own doorway, in my own son's grip, and something in my chest went very quiet. I turned around, walked to my car, and had my lawyer on the phone before the engine even turned over. My name is Walter Meskill. I'm 63. For 31 years, I ran maintenance and compliance for the Portland Municipal Water Authority, which meant my entire career was making sure nobody in this city turned on a faucet and got something they didn't expect. Funny, the one place I never thought to run an inspection was my own house. I retired 2 years ago with a pension, a paid-off place on Selwood Avenue, and one hobby, annoying my wife. But before I tell you how I ended up standing outside my son's apartment getting stared down like a trespasser, tell me where you're watching this from. I'd genuinely love to know. Here's the setup. Diane and I have been married 38 years, married in her mother's Milwaukee backyard on a card table full of deviled eggs, my uncle butchering an accordion in the corner. We have one son, Chris, 34 now. Chris married Nicole 6 years ago. That's the setup. Here's how it fell apart. Diane is the kind of woman who remembers everyone's birthday, including the mailman's, and who once made a grown man cry apologizing to her at the DMV, not by yelling, but by asking one very calm, very specific question. 26 years, as an elementary school secretary. Nothing gets past her. Pete Ostrowski has been my best friend for 24 years. We met on a softball team that doesn't exist anymore. Neither of us can play a lick these days, and we still talk almost every day. Retired postal worker, currently spends his time fixing lawnmowers nobody asked him to fix. Our life before all this was quiet in the good way. Sunday dinners. Diane's garden. Pete showing up uninvited with beer and opinions. Chris calling most weeks. Less after he married Nicole, which I told myself was just marriage, not anything to worry about. Nicole is a paralegal at an estate planning firm downtown, Reyes and Blackmore. 32, sharp, organized, the color-coding type. I liked her fine at first. Polite at dinner, asked good questions. Remember Diane takes her coffee with 2 sugars. What I didn't know for the first 4 years was that she and Chris had sunk almost everything into a restaurant on Hawthorne called the Copper Skillet, and by early last year it was bleeding something like $11,000 a month they didn't have. The warning signs were small enough that I waved every one of them off. Last February, Chris asked me, casual as weather talk, whether Diane and I had ever set up a living trust. I said no, just simple wills from a guy in Selwood who'd since retired. Chris said that was smart to think about at our age. I said, sure, someday. In March, a title company called the house confirming an appointment neither of us remembered making. Wrong number, I figured. In April, some of the mail stopped showing up. Not all of it, just certain things. A couple bank statements. Chalked it up to the Postal Service being the Postal Service. No offense to Pete. One Sunday that same month, I stopped by Chris and Nicole's place to drop off a letter, and caught Nicole on the back steps, on the phone, not knowing I could hear her through the screen door. She sounded tired in a way I hadn't heard before, telling someone she just needed 6 more months, that she had a plan, that nobody was losing that restaurant on her watch. I felt sorry for her. That's all I felt. Looking back now, I know exactly what those 6 months meant, and exactly whose money was going to fund them. None of it alarmed me on its own. I'm not a paranoid man. I spent my whole career trusting systems to work the way they're supposed to. That was exactly the problem. In June, I walked into our branch of the bank to add Diane as a joint signer on a CD, something I should have done years ago. The branch manager, Denise Kowalski, who'd handled our accounts for 11 years, pulled up the file, and her face changed. "Walter," she said, "there's a power of attorney filed against this account from back in March." I told her that wasn't possible. She turned the screen around. Nicole Reyes Mesquill, attorney in fact for Walter Mesquill. Authority over banking, real estate, and financial decisions. Notarized March 14th. I didn't recognize the notary's name. I didn't recognize my own signature. Once I looked closely, the D curved wrong. Close enough to pass a glance. Not mine. I drove straight to the county recorder's office and pulled the filing myself. 4 pages. My name typed clean across the top. A notary stamp from a woman named Carla Ives I had never met in my life. Attached to it, a second document, a deed transfer request for the Selwood house, sitting in a folder, waiting on the POA to clear before it could be recorded. My house. Paid off in 2019. Waiting to be moved into somebody else's name. I sat in my truck in that parking lot a long time. My hands didn't shake. They just went still on the wheel, like they'd stopped being useful for anything. That night I called Pete. He picked up on the second ring, same as always. "Pete," I said, "I think Nicole's trying to steal my house." Long pause. "Say that again, slower." I told him everything, the POA, the deed folder, the notary I'd never met. He was quiet, then said, "Walter, does Chris know about this?" "I don't know. That's the part that's going to hurt worse than the money." He was right. The next morning I called Rebecca Voss, an estate litigation attorney Denise had recommended, direct, unpleasant to be sued by. With a laugh, like a car alarm she deployed maybe twice a meeting, always when you least expected it. She read the filings once, set them down, and said, "Walter, this notary stamp is fake. There is no Carla Ives registered as a notary in the state of Oregon. Somebody manufactured this." Her plan had 4 parts. File an emergency revocation of the POA, 10 days to freeze any pending transfer. Subpoena Reyes and Blackmore to trace the notary template. Prepare a civil complaint for fraud and forgery. And file a state bar referral, since Nicole's paralegal certification came with ethics rules covering exactly this. The criminal referral would wait until the paper trail was locked. Prosecutors want evidence, not accusations. "Don't say a word to Chris or Nicole until I give you the go-ahead," she told me. 6 weeks, give or take. And Walter, I need you to be boring for 6 weeks. Don't confront anybody. Just live your life. I tried. Diane didn't know the details yet, only that something was wrong, because she's known me 38 years, and I stopped sleeping right around week 2. I told her everything on a Tuesday night at the kitchen table. She went very quiet. Then, in that flat, calm voice she uses when she's more furious than she's ever been, "Give me a copy of that filing." She read it twice. "That girl remembered my coffee order and forged my husband's signature in the same year. I'm almost impressed." 6 weeks later, on a Saturday in late July, Chris and Nicole hosted a family dinner, Nicole's parents in from Salem. Rebecca had cleared us that same week. The POA revoked, the notary confirmed fake and traced to a stamp kit ordered under Nicole's name, the transfer paperwork frozen before it ever reached the county desk. I drove over to speak to Chris alone before dinner. Whatever was coming, I wanted my son to hear it from me first. He met me at the door, and I saw it in his face before he said a word, the tight jaw, the eyes that wouldn't quite land on mine. He put both arms out like he was guarding a gate. "Dad, you are not going into that room while my wife's family is here." I stood there, looking at my own son in my own doorway, guarding a table I'd been invited to, protecting the woman who'd forged my name. "Chris," I said. Do you know what she did? Don't do this here. Nicole came up behind him, drying her hands on a dish towel. She saw my face and stopped in the hallway. Walter, whatever this is, can it wait until my parents leave? No, Nicole. I don't think it can. There's a power of attorney with my name on it, and a fake notary stamp filed in March. She didn't flinch right away. I was protecting the house. For the family. For Chris. For you and Diane both. You're getting older, and nothing was set up right. I never asked you to protect anything. You would have thanked me eventually. Once you understood what I was trying to do for this family. Nicole, the notary on that document doesn't exist. Nobody by that name is registered anywhere in this state. That's not protecting anybody. That's forgery. She didn't have an answer for that one. I watched her face go still, the same stillness my hands had found in that truck. Chris looked at her, then at me, and something behind his eyes cracked. Not surprise, exactly. More like a man watching a bridge he'd already half suspected was rotten finally give. That's not what happened, he said. She was just trying to help us plan ahead. My signature is forged, Chris. There's no version of helping that includes forging a signature. He didn't have an answer either. I turned around, walked to my car, and called Rebecca before I'd even started the engine. If this happened to you, if you found out someone in your own family had done this, what would you do? The rest moved through Rebecca's office, not a courtroom shouting match. Nicole was charged with first-degree forgery and identity theft, both Class C felonies given the forged POA and the attempted deed transfer on a house worth over $400,000. She pled to a reduced single count of forgery, 3 years probation, restitution for our legal fees, and permanent revocation of her paralegal certification. She lost her job at Reyes and Blackmore within a week of the subpoena landing. The copper skillet closed for good in October. The debt that started it all catching up regardless. Chris moved out in September. He and Nicole separated, not divorced, but living apart, and he's been renting near Milwaukee since. He calls now every week, sometimes twice. It's not fixed. Rebecca told me some things take longer to repair than a court filing, and she's right. But he came to Thanksgiving. Sat next to me instead of across from me. That felt like something. The house is still ours. Deed clean, nothing pending. Diane had the locks changed that same week, not because she thought Nicole would show up with a crowbar, but because, in her words, a woman deserves to feel like her own front door means something again. It's a Sunday evening now, 6 months later. Diane's in the kitchen arguing with a recipe that's personally wronged her. Pete's on the back porch pretending to fix a lawnmower that runs perfectly fine, just so he has an excuse to sit here. Diane yells through the window that dinner's in 20 minutes, and if Pete kills another patch of her grass, she's billing him for it. Pete yells back that he'll take that under advisement. I sit down next to him. For a while, neither of us says anything. Some evenings don't need filling.